Okay, so I sent away for this 3D print from a local printer. They just use a Form 1 Plus desktop 3D printer, and this is what I would call a rapid prototype. So you can see it's comes out on big supports like this, and the detail isn't the crisp detail you expect for a miniature, but it does have a really important purpose. So with this rapid prototype, I'm able to look at the model as it will actually exist. This is an object, so my interaction with it is completely different than if I'm looking at it on a screen. And also, I can look at it and make sure that it's actually physically to scale with the other models, and be able to judge if something like the weapon is too thin, or if there's another detail that needs to be changed. So what I did is the hub I used actually gave me 2 prints. They wanted to make sure that it came out right, so they ran 2 prints through the machine. And so I have this one that's still on the supports. I wanted you to all be able to see how that comes out. It's pretty interesting 3D printing technology. And then over here, I have a thief that I cut off the supports and assembled. So here we can really start to look at the model and figure out what's working and what isn't. And I think that this actually turned out really good. So the only adjustment that I really want to make is that this dagger is pretty thin. And if something's too thin during the mold making process, it can get totally crushed and disappear. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'm going to make that blade a little bit thicker. And then also on this hand, I'm going to try and make the finger stand out a little bit more by shrinking the hand grenade. So if the grenade's smaller, then her fingers will stand out with a little bit more detail. Otherwise, I think it's all turning out really great. And it's hard to really get the fine detail, but you can get a good sense of the model and how it'll be on the board. And the last thing, of course, that we need to make sure we do is compare it to other models that are already in the range. So you can see she's tall, but I don't really want to shrink her down too much. I still want her to be live and have presence on the board. But there you can see her next to the questing knight and see how the characters look next to each other. And that's another really important consideration. You want to make sure that when they're on the board, they exist in the same world. So that is the rapid prototype. Now I'm going to get back into the digital realm to make the adjustments I need to make before I order a high resolution print. And when we get that in the mail, that's going to be really exciting. Okay, so the first thing I do from here is open up the sculpt that hasn't been merged together yet. So that way I can affect each of the different parts, and they're all individual pieces still. So the first thing I'm going to deal with here is the dagger. And I want to make it just about as thick as I can reasonably get it. So I repositioned the pinky. I felt like that was more of a natural pose for it to be in. And then got into the dagger and widened it. So first looking at the handle and making sure the handle is as thick as I can get it, and then positioning the blade and making sure the blade is thick. And then grabbing the hand grenade and making that smaller is pretty easy too. We jump ahead here, you can see the model changed color, but I didn't quite go into very much detail about keying the pieces, and so I'm going to talk about that. Otherwise, the process is just the same as getting it ready for the other prototype. So I have the arm and then the hand, and so the hand with the dagger is all one piece. So I have that in place, and then I actually make a copy of the arm. So that's where the two parts are supposed to fit together, right? So I take the arm and I turn it into its own part that's going to be a subtractive element. So I'm going to make it so that the arm is going to subtract everywhere the arm collides with the hand. And what that'll do is create a hole, an arm-shaped hole, into the wrist of the hand piece. So that way the parts fit together. Then now that all of the model is merged and decimated and all of that, I move it into Netfab again. And in this case, rather than having the dagger attached to the tab, I'm going to take the whole STL and I'm going to cut it in half, essentially, where one piece will now be the thief and then another piece will now be the dagger. And that way I have the dagger as exactly the same scale as the thief. They were exported together, they're the same scale with one another, and then now they're two separate parts that'll be printed separately as well. And then you can see I drop in not only the knight, as I did before, but the old rapid prototype thief. And so that way I'm double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking the scale, because this is totally a measure twice, cut once situation. I can't afford multiple high resolution prototypes, so I'm going to measure and measure and double check and measure. Now, the last thing I'm doing here is I'm actually going to email the mold maker. He knows way more about making molds than I know, and so I want to defer to his knowledge. I got an email back from him not long after I sent it, and then I uploaded the files and sent them to Vision Proto. So everything was approved, and now I'm going to be able to get the high resolution prototype next time we talk.